Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly 90-minute deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Dave. I'm a parent of a daughter in college, and we live in Chicago, Illinois.
My name is Lisa. I'm a clinical psychologist and a college counselor. I am a parent of a boy in elementary school, a girl in middle school, and a girl in college. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University.
This week in the news, the case for the college exit exam by Douglas Belkin of the Wall Street Journal. Our questions from a listener are, question 1, now that most schools are test optional, is there any advantage to taking the SAT or ACT exam to get merit money? That comes from Elizabeth in California. And question number 2 is, where did you get the data on the percentage of kids choosing what essay prompts on the Common App? Our interview is the final part with Lisa Keegan, the Vice President of Enrollment at Bucknell, on the importance of fit when selecting a college. And our college spotlight comes to you from Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's the all-women's college of Meredith College.
And friends, I was fired up and ready to go last week, and I'm still fired up and ready to go. So excited about today, excited, and thank you, every one of you, for listening. I do want to thank the 117 people that have now completed our survey, our Your College Bound Kids survey, and are we ever learning a lot? This information is invaluable. You're going to see a number of changes that we are going to implement as a result of your input. If you haven't completed it yet, please go to yourcollegeboundkid.com. Under the resource section, you'll see listener survey. Takes about 10 minutes. Our goal is to get to 150. So it's actually easier, Dave, to get the first 117 than it is to get the last 33.
Yes,
because we get the zealous, folks who just love the podcast and will contribute anyway. They come out and, not to say there's only 117 people like that, but you know how that is. So this last 33, we really, really want you because you're helping us tremendously. And you're also helping our interviewees who just love when I share the last survey with them. They know who they're speaking to. Speaking of which, I want to implement one change right away. Dave, I hate to do this. I have to eat humble pie. We've known each other our whole lives, so I hate being wrong to you. But one of the feedback was less small talk with Dave at the start. Jump right into your admissions tip, And so I'm such a chatterbox. And Dave and I, a lot of times I forget we're podcasting. It's almost like we're just talking, like we've done all our lives and the recorder's on. But that was some of the feedback. So Dave was telling me this. So I got to take humble pie, listen to our listeners. And that's why you do a survey like that. So with no further ado, hate to be wrong, you dude, but I got to take my medicine. So I'm going to jump right into admissions tip quickly this time. All right. So admissions tip, it looks at demonstrated interest. And, you will frequently hear schools say, we don't use demonstrated interest in our admission process. And sometimes that's true, especially with public schools. But I want to tell you, for the most part, to have a very, very healthy dose of cynicism if you ever hear that from a private school. Because what they're doing is it's not that they're lying to you. They're using a different definition of demonstrated interest than you and I would use. Demonstrated interest to me means if I communicate to a school that I'm more likely to come, then that increases my chances that they will admit me. That's what demonstrated interest means to me. It's just straightforward. But when most private colleges say, oh, we don't use demonstrated interest, what they actually mean is we don't have these sophisticated methodological systems where we assign points to different forms of behavior and give you a score of your probability of coming. And that's one of the biggest factors that we use to decide who we admit and who we don't, because there are schools that do that. And so, but almost every school, private schools in particular, are using interest at some level. Case in point, Harvard, which has got as big a brand name as you could possibly have, has a dean that's been there 50 years. He wanted to try to get rid of single choice early action. I have this from very, very high level source. Single choice early action says that you have to let Harvard know that single choice early action means if you're going to apply early action to Harvard, you can't apply early action to any other school other than some local publics. He wanted to get rid of it and just go to complete unrestricted early action because he thought that was fair to students, and he got shot down by some powerful people on the board. Why? Because the last time when Harvard had that, their yield weight went down. Yield is the percentage of accepts that come. And so he got blowback, even after being there for 50 years, one of the legends in the business. So if Harvard at some level is using interest, then what do you think most other people are doing? So there's various ways in which interest is used. So I'm just encouraging you to have a very healthy dose of skepticism when any private school says they don't use demonstrated interest. It'd be like me saying, hey, Dave, was the hotel comfortable and that you stayed at? And when I say that to Dave, he's comparing it to 5-star standards. But somebody else might just be comparing it to an average place. So people are using different definitions. All right, so that's my tip. It was long, but hopefully it was effective. All right, vernacular, Dave. I'm going to give you a term that, because you've gotten 3 in a row, or close to 3 of the last 4, this one's tough. But it's this hot term that everybody's using. And I hadn't even heard of it 6 months ago because it actually hadn't been created. The term is highly rejective. What does highly rejective mean?
Highly rejective. Could be, I'm not sure, I'm guessing. I'm guessing it's some sort of college and institution that it rejects a lot of people.
You got it right. Your guessing was right. So we have some people who listen that like to nerd out and geek out and really get into this stuff hardcore, like literally like their PhDs in admission. So I'm going to go a little deep on this. So Akil Bello is arguably, in my opinion, one of the top 3 scholars when it comes to exposing the biases of class and race with standardized testing. I would put John Bockenstadt at Oregon State and Robert Schaefer at Fair Test. Those 3, to me, are the biggest iconoclasts out there that are like a pain in the butt to the ACT and the SAT. And Akil Bello is an interesting guy. I mean, he didn't even bust 1,000 himself on the SAT, and then he built one of the nation's best test prep organizations, and he would take kids like himself, they got like a 900 in the SAT, and turn them around and get 1480 out of these kids. And he loved to just show the SAT and the ACT how their tests could be coached. And so he basically coined the term, and he coined it recently. He coined it in the last few months, and it just kind of taken off all over. So you're starting to hear it a lot. Highly rejective colleges are colleges that admit less than 15%. And as this is a quote from Bello, I've said before, a college that admits 15% of applicants really has a rejections office, not an admission office. So that's where the term goes. And so if you like to read up on someone who likes to break glass, he knows how to break glass and throw grenades. And when it comes to the SAT and SAT, check out Akil Bello, Akilbello. All right, Dave.
Yep.
I'm going to break it up. Instead of a big number, I'm going to give a small number this time.
Okay.
The number's 3. Almost as small as it gets. Just a little creativity.
That's right.
This is actually something I learned from Akil Bello. But 3 are the number of students at the Mortuary School of Cincinnati. Now you say, well, why are you talking about the Mortuary School of Cincinnati? Because if you look up a list of certain colleges, you'll see literally every school in there, including the Mortuary School of Cincinnati. So why is it that when you hear various people talk, you hear all kinds of different numbers as to how many colleges are out there? Someone will say there's 7,000. Someone will say there's 5,000. Someone will say there's 4,000. I tend to use the term 23 to 2,400. It's because people are using all kinds of different definitions. Some people are counting nonprofits. Some people are counting certificate programs. I tend to refer to institutions that are accredited so they can receive federal financial aid. They offer 4-year bachelor's degrees. And that number is 23 to 2,400. And it doesn't include the mortuary schools of Cincinnati that are in there when you start hearing people say there's 5, 6, or 7,000 schools in the country. Does that make sense, Dave?
Yeah, it sure does, man. I mean, so the bottom line, if you're hanging out with zombies, you only have 3 people in your class, you ain't making your list.
Yeah, basically. Basically. So there you go. But listen, we got a great article. I want to shout out Vivek, one of our super dedicated listeners in Massachusetts. He's the one who sent in this article, which we are discussing today. Take it away, my friend.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
All right. The article, The Case for the College Exit Exam by Douglas Belkin of the Wall Street Journal. Douglas, in this article, asks the question, how can you tell if a university graduate can think clearly, communicate precisely, and solve problems effectively? He says that for years, confidence in higher education has been declining along with total enrollment, and that transcripts don't carry as much weight as they used to due to rampant grade inflation, so much so that corporate leaders doubt whether graduates have what it takes to do critical thinking in the corporate world. And for millions of people, they are questioning the value of a four-year degree. So this gentleman, a Ohio University economist, Richard K. Vedder, believes he's found the answer, and that's in a college exit exam. He came up with this great idea in 2004, and he was the founding director of Center for College Affordability. And he proposes a 3.5-hour test where a student would answer 100 questions, 10 on math, 10 on natural sciences, 10 on literature, etc., and 25 questions from a field of their choice. He wants this exam to be certified by a third party, and then he wants the graduates to be able to list it on their resume. Well, you might ask, why in the world does he think that this exit exam is going to make any difference? Well, he thinks that it could combat the decline of the SAT and the ACT, and that without competition and transparency, the quality of education will decline, and so everyone will question the value of a degree. So, Mark, let me throw this question out to you. Does it make sense for us to have a college exit exam?
I'll tell you, Dave, this was an article that I was so conflicted by. It's sort of like you hear two attorneys, and you hear the first attorney, you're like, yeah, you're right. And then you hear the other attorney, you're like, yeah, you're right. And so and I'm very curious to know what you think, but I'll tell you my thoughts, and then I'd like to hear yours. So there were a lot of compelling reasons I thought for the exam. On one level, I thought, wow, and the article points this out, that what a great way to highlight some small, sort of unheralded schools that are doing incredible work. What if this became the new standard? It talked about there's a gap now with the ACT and the SAT and diminished effectiveness. I was thinking, wow, what a great way to diminish the role of the rankings, which, I think are a bunch of malarkey. And so I thought this could be really good. And one of the reasons I thought it could be good is because we do know that colleges are losing their place and their stature in the eyes of the American public. So here's a quote from the article. It says a Gallup poll of 2,033 U.S. adults found that 51% believed a college education is very important. That is down from 70% in 2013, and just 41% of people between 18 and 29 believe college is important. And Dave, we did a whole in the news on that. We talked about how it's particularly pronounced in conservative circles, and there's like over a 30-point gap between Republicans and Democrats on this topic. So I won't try to spend too much time there. But we know that higher ed is struggling. People are having a hard time believing that the skyrocketing price is worth it. So I was thinking, okay, this could be not a panacea, but it could be part of the solution. I was envisioning a world where you have this test and this score, and it goes on your transcript. And I was thinking about all the other certifications that are out there. Like you got to do well on the NCLEX if you're in nursing, and the CPA exam and the bar exam, and all the different MCATs. And there's just so tests for almost every industry out there. Why not have one here, a knowledge test? But then the other part of my brain kicked in, and the article kicked in. One is going to breed this whole coaching industry, just like the SAT and ACT, which is going to just have class bias. But to me, some of the most compelling arguments were in the article, and I'll read what it says when the other side came out. It says this: most colleges and universities would reject a one-size-fits-all exam because schools emphasize different type of thinking, different types of knowledge, different types of learning, says Jorge Gonzalez, president of Kalamazoo College, private nonprofit liberal arts school in Michigan. And then it says the decentralized nature of the system makes it so difficult to be able to conceive of a test that's going to be able to assess fairly the learning that takes place across different segments. And then it talked about Wayne State in Detroit and their experiment trying to do this and how it basically ended up flopping and not and being a failure. And then it talked about how employers are taking it on themselves now because of the disparate training people have to fill in the gap and have their own tests that they're administering as part of their interview process. And then I thought about how, this is not the article to talk about this too much, but what if schools had to have like two internships with employers, and you get real life experiential education as part of the graduation requirement? And what if the employers had to provide rankings for you that actually went on your degree? Rankings for your problem solving skills, for your interpersonal skills, for your work ethic and all of that. That to me would be a better system because it would incorporate your ability to apply real world thinking to the, or problem solving and knowledge to people skills in a job environment. So toward the end, I started thinking that, you know what? I'm not sold. I think there's a better way. But what are your thoughts, Dave? I have a feeling you might not agree with me.
Well, I think a couple things. The criticism that I would have was actually echoed in the article, and that was, quote, most colleges and universities would reject a one-size-fits-all exam because students emphasize different types of thinking, knowledge, and learning. And the fact is that kids aren't going to college just to get a job. There's something called enlightenment that was essential to the liberal arts philosophy that does not necessarily emphasize marketable skills. Some kids go to philosophy or to religion or to history just to learn about things and to change their perspective on life. And that may not be reflected in 100-question test where they're being also tested on math and stats and stuff that's not relevant to their own personal enlightenment. And how are you going to compare a computer engineer or an electrical engineer to someone who did philosophy or a foreign language? So I just think the breadth and depth of what college represents in terms of education is way too broad to be measured and compared via 100-question test.
I agree with that. I had to come around to that position because when I was reading it first, I thought, what if it sounds like is a better system than the rankings. It could be a way for some small schools to shine. But, so part of what you're saying is, one, there's no one size fits all. There's different types of learning. Two, that's not the only reason you go to college, and it reduces costs to that. That doesn't even mention other things like, how the whole coaching industry that it could breed. And another point the article brings out is, unless employers were demanding that score, colleges aren't going to comply.
That's right.
And the article actually points out that this Ohio University professor, he's been working on this since like 2003. So this has been he's been on this, this mission now for 18 years. And so, it does say he's been making some headway. It quoted some people that are starting to pay attention to it, but it's a long way from being implemented. I mean, if employers are not demanding this number, then most schools are just going to say, sorry, I'm not going to do it. And then what happens? So it's somewhat of a theoretical abstraction that's probably not going to happen.
And then let me ask you this question, Mark. What percentage of kids graduate from college right now that actually start the first year? What percentage complete it in 6 years?
6-year numbers are into the 60s. The 4-year numbers are in the low 40s. It's incredibly correlated by the family wealth and the zip code that you live in, right?
Okay.
And so take it with well-resourced families, the number's extremely high because dropping out is so oftentimes a financial decision.
Right. So in other words, we have 30 to 50% of our kids who do not complete the college as structured now. I think our resources would be better directed to getting kids to actually complete the courses of study they've embarked on, regardless of whatever skill sets they end up with. at least they've completed it, rather than trying to have an entrance exam to measure the successes. We've got to actually deal with the kids, often economic, who don't even make it through the system. And I think that would do more to address the skills gap, quite frankly, than trying to measure the achievements of those who have already completed the process.
Yeah, I don't necessarily deny that. What do you think about my idea? Now, I know this would never happen either, right? Because colleges are not obligated to have a student have two internship type experiences. But I was thinking, let's say you had to have two internship experiences. I'm really big on experiential education. I do believe in learning by doing. So I'm just a huge advocate of that to begin with. And I love schools, like the Elons and the SLUs and that we like to shout out here that put such a huge emphasis on it. They're oftentimes ones we pick for spotlights. But what if an employer had to give you ratings in some preset categories and that actually went on your transcript? Now, there's still obviously there could be a subjective element there too, right? What's this a person grade hard, easy? Did you get assigned with somebody that wasn't that great? But do you see potential for that, or do you think that's just completely fraught with?
Well, once again, there's a whole range of college courses and pursuits that are not connected to jobs. Theoretical theories, physics, theoretical mathematics, philosophy, history, those aren't academic pursuits that are tied to a specific internship. You're there to learn the knowledge for the knowledge's sake, not because it's necessarily tied to an income producing activity. So I think that internships of themselves are only relevant to a narrow spectrum of what college is there to teach us.
Well, I probably have a slightly different view on that. Like I do agree that college is there to train your mind and to grow and to help grow you as a person. But most people are going to have to work, and being able to function well in a context with others is something that's going to be an extremely important skill for most people. And to the extent that it wasn't, somebody could just ignore that. Ignore that. And once again, we're talking about a theoretical abstraction because it's not going to happen. But I'm actually presenting a question. Would it be a good thing if every school had every student have to have two, they don't have to be co-ops, but at least two semester type long, it could be over the summer, internship type experiences where you're in the real world and there was some feedback from your employer supervisor that actually went onto a transcript. I actually think that'd be good. And we may disagree on it.
Okay, no problem. I mean, once again, if what you're pursuing is linked to economic activity, then that would make sense. But I just think there's so much more to college than preparing you for a job, and that's the issue.
Yeah, and the reason why that wouldn't bother me is let's say you did an internship and it wasn't related at all to the job that you pursued later. Then that would be taken into consideration. It would be like, okay, you did this internship in this chemistry lab, and I'm hiring you for a sales job, so I don't really care about that. But you know what? We're doing something we're not supposed to do. We're taking the article and just jumping off and talking about whatever we want to do, like we're just
digress.
like we want one of our typical conversations we have every week. And so let's digress less.
Yes.
And transition.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
Friends, big announcement to make this week. Very excited about it. So normally I do announcements with Dave, but I thought I would do this one with Lisa. So we are going to add another person to our team. Her name is Sylvia Borgo. We're very excited about it. She's going to be on around maybe about 4 episodes a year. And we did this for a number of reasons. So I always look at our team and I think, what is something that we could use more of to strengthen our team? And one thing I felt I needed was give people a rest. I feel like I burned out Anika, just being honest. I don't want to burn out Lisa and Dave. I want them here 3 years from now because I'll be podcasting. So I thought, okay, what if they have an emergency or they're just slammed? I need someone to give them a rest. Anika can do it a little bit, but she's still so burned out. She's like, Mark, I can do 2 episodes a year. So Sylvia is someone I've gotten to know through the podcast for the last several years. She's fantastic. I think you guys are really going to like her a lot. Like Lisa, she's also been through the UC Irvine College Counseling Program. So she also does college counseling. But she adds a few things that I think our team could use. One is another woman.
Yay.
And some of you made a couple comments in the question. Like, there's a lot of testosterone going on over there with you and Dave. Could use another woman.
More estrogen.
Yes. I'll share one little tidbit from our survey. 76% of our listeners are women. 76%, and they're moms. And so we got another mom perspective, which I think is important. And something else that's really important is we get a West Coast perspective. So Sylvia's lived in San Diego for a long time now. And that's just a big part of our listenership. And when you don't live in a place, you can have blinders to that. So she'll sensitize us to West Coast, give us another woman perspective. And she's also Latina, so she adds to our diversity that way as well. And so she'll be making her first appearance on episode 194, and 2 weeks from now. And she will be doing the college spotlight because she lives in San Diego. She knows UCSD quite well, University of California at San Diego. And guess what? Her husband's even a professor there. So we're excited about that. And the third thing she's going to help out with is give us a little break on the spotlights. We love them, but they're pretty time consuming. And so to have another person with the spotlights. And so Lisa's fresh right now. She's still good. She doesn't need a break. So it'll be the three of us together. So for the first time ever, women will dominate the podcast for that
the
episode.
First, but not the last.
But not the last. So that's it. We're not going to do our countdown today. That's our big announcement, but we're really excited about it. I've gotten to know her. I really think you guys are going to like her a lot. So make sure you tune in to episode 194. All right, Lisa, we're trying to do this multi-question thing now to try to catch up. And this is our first time ever. We're trying to do 3 quickies. So take it away.
All right, here's the first quickie. Hi, Mark. It's your old friend Elizabeth in California with another question that I've been thinking of lately. Love the extra content about the UCs and the decision to reduce numbers of out-of-state students, by the way. It's definitely a hot topic here among parents I know. So it was interesting to hear your perspective on it. So my newest question is, now that most schools are test optional or test blind for admissions, is there any advantage to having your student take the ACT or SAT for the purposes of trying to get merit money? I wouldn't want to tell my daughter that she doesn't have to take the ACT and then end up losing out on merit scholarships because they require them for consideration. On the other hand, if they are not using them to determine merit scholarships, then I wonder, what is the point of taking them? What are your insights on this? Thank you.
All right, great question. Thank you, Elizabeth. And there's our proof, California. We're California. So I think you're absolutely onto something, Elizabeth. I think that you need to be very mindful of whether a school is test optional only for admission versus merit scholarships. Now, I'm going to use an example that's as contemporary as we can get. Later on in this episode, Lisa and I are going to talk about our visit to Meredith College. That's our spotlight for the week. So when we talk about Meredith, they're an example of a school that does exactly what you are concerned about missing out on. So they're a school that works off of a high tuition discount model, meaning their sticker price looks fairly high, but they build scholarships in pretty much to all of their applicants. And the way they build their scholarships in is there's an automatic scholarship that ranges from $17,000 to $24,000 that every applicant gets. So right off the top, you know you can take $17,000 off minimum. But check out how they do this. They have gone test optional. They went test optional in 2021. They've reaffirmed that they're test optional again for 2022. However, the most amount of money that a student can get who applies as a test optional applicant for their 17 to 24 is 17 to 19. The 20 to 24 is exclusively for people that also do well on the test. So there's an example of one school literally that we're going to be talking about today. And there are others as well. And so if you have a specific school in mind, I encourage you to, at a minimum, check their website and check their scholarship section and their criteria. I'd even recommend you go beyond that and have a conversation with an admission officer. But I believe in the whole adage, better safe than sorry. And I would work off of the assumption that for merit scholarships, doing well on testing is going to benefit you. Now, there certainly are schools that are being pushed and being told, you say you're test optional, but you're really not, because look at the merit scholarships. And so I am noticing a growing trend. We're not using test scores for admission to honors colleges or honors programs. We're not using test scores for admission for our merit scholarships. But there's still a long ways to go before that's universal. And quite honestly, I don't think that will ever happen. So the short answer is I would not neglect testing because there may be a correlation with merit scholarships and other things as well, like getting into honors college and honor programs. Anything you want to add on that, Lisa?
Well, that's depressing. I mean,
because you thought you were completely liberated out of the test score game.
I know. Well, tests are just such a source of stress for families and kids, but it seems like they're a necessary evil in the college admissions game at this point still.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to submit them. I'm like, go through, take them, see what they are, then look at the individual schools you're interested in. But I realize half the stress is taking them, not submitting them. Unless you see that a school is test blind, score free, or test free. All of those terms are synonyms to say that they won't even see your scores, even if you were to submit them. Unless the school has no merit scholarships, or unless the school explicitly says test scores are not being used for merit scholarships, the safe play is to assume test scores will be a factor in scholarship money. But there you go. We got to keep it real. That's what we do on Your College Bound Kid. What's question number 2?
Question number 2. In episode 62, you comment on the percentage of how many students pick each essay prompt. Where did you get this data? I asked so I can look it up in several years when my child is filling out the Common App. This question comes from Ryan in Arizona.
Yeah, so you might have heard me a few times. I've referred to 24% of people took this question, but only 4% answered this one, and 18% did this. So one of the excellent blogs that's always worth checking out is the Common App blog. It's really chock full of a lot of helpful information. They also let you know when they're doing webinars, and those webinars tend to be really good. They let you know the changes that are happening with the Common App from one year to the next, and new members that join, and typically about 40 new schools join every year. So, but one of the things they always do is they do give you the breakdown of that data. What percentage of people took each question or answered each question. And I find Common App to be incredibly responsive. So when I shoot them an email, they back to me usually within 15 minutes. They have like a student section, a counselor section, different sections where you can shoot them an email. And so if you don't feel like doing all that digging, you also could shoot them an email as well. And I'm quite confident they would get back to you if you didn't feel like digging through past blogs. But it's something that I noticed they do put out at least once a year in their blog, the breakdown of the percentage of people answering each question. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's good information. And I applaud this questioner because they are planning way in advance.
Yes. And they're listening very attentively, too.
I know. Attention to detail, planning. I love it.
Now, I'm not the biggest person who thinks you should overthink things and say, okay, this question hasn't been answered by that many people, therefore that's the one I need to do. I'm more into what message do you want to convey to the admission office? And once we know what that message is, let's go back and look and see which of the questions lines up best with that prompt. And worst case scenario, there's always the catch-all category, which they've now, I think this is the year 3. They've had the, pick your topic of your choice, which they took from the coalition. So one good thing about the coalition is it has made the Common App stronger in a lot of ways, and that's one big addition to the Common App is you now have a topic of your choice, which the coalition introduced and the Common App followed suit. I have to say this before you ask it. Are you having a heart attack that I made it through 2 questions in less than 10 minutes?
I just looked at the clock and saw we were under 10 minutes, and I was shocked.
Yeah, and that was about 3 minutes me talking about Sylvia, too.
I know. That's amazing.
Joining our team.
That's amazing. You've made a lot of progress. You should be very proud.
Well, that's because in the survey, they said, button it up, stop all the small talk, get to the point. And I'm really trying to read the surveys.
All right. Question number 3 comes from Bobby, a mom in Ohio. I looked at an online cost calculator for a prestigious but not unattainable private liberal arts university. One of the questions they asked in their quick calculator was, are you working with a CBO? What does it say about my kid if we are or are not using a CBO in the eyes of the admissions department and or financial aid office? How and why would that change how much we're going to have to pay?
It's a really, really, really good question. And I had to follow up with Bobby with a little bit more clarification. I'm like, can you send me the exact wording? Because it is a little bizarre the way that question is worded. So just a little bit of background. CBO is an acronym. It stands for Community-Based Organization. CBOs help normally under-resourced kids with the college process because they're not able to pay for educational consultants, and they're normally not getting the resources at their school. So both Lisa and I are both affiliated with a CBO. Scholar Match is the one you're affiliated with, right, Lisa? Is that the name? That Lisa works with several kids from Scholar Match. And then my job, I'm director of college counseling for a CBO. KIP is not all a CBO, but I'm in the CBO wing. So I work with kids that are not, they're scattered all over the country. They're not in one high school. I help them with the college process. So what I've noticed from doing this, because I've been there for 13 years now, is that certain CBOs develop certain partnerships with certain schools. At KIP, we have partnerships with both Duke and UPenn. In fact, when Lisa and I were together on Duke's campus, she knows she was with me at like a 45-minute meeting with somebody who's over, the KIP CBO partnership, talking about some of the intricacies of the relationship. And we meaning KIP, we have 57 kids at the University of Pennsylvania and 55 at Duke. So that's because of a partnership. So sometimes schools have unique partnerships. We have partnerships with over 90 colleges. With Duke and Penn, it's a little different because in each case, somebody gave those schools $5 million for KIP kids. So
Wow.
they can throw all the money at our kids and it doesn't touch their dollars at all. And you have somebody like that, that's somebody that, usually is giving your school a lot of money, and then they want to keep that benefactor very happy and report back to them how they're doing. So that's a unique relationship. I see that. Chicago Scholars is a CBO. You're probably familiar with them, Lisa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a CBO that's pretty popular in the Chicago area. I know they have partnerships with different schools. When I was traveling throughout Minnesota, Minneapolis, several schools brought up their partnership that they have with Chicago Scholars. So sometimes I see individual partnerships that emerge for specific CBOs. And I understand in those instances why they would want to know what the CBO is because of the unique partnership and communication. A lot of times you're having conversations with that college counselor, or you're reporting to your board, or this, that, the other. But I've never seen anything that just says CBO blank general and there's financial ramifications for that. I've never seen that. The one thing that I have seen is I have seen schools report out the percentage of kids they took from CBOs just in general. You may remember when I interviewed Eric Furta and I asked him, how can you know what a school's institutional priorities were? And he talked about how take a look at when they self-report their class, the announcement they make every year, and the things that they report out, or things that show up when you do a search. Like you can do a search for any school and search for their class profile. Name the school and then put class profile 2025, and they'll list a bunch of things. So I do see schools report out that we took X number of kids from CBOs. And that tends to be something they like to brag about because the assumption is that these are under-resourced, often first gen, usually non-wealthy, although not all CBOs have income caps. Some do, some don't. Like where I'm at, there's not an income cap. But like Questbridge does have an income cap. Posse does not have an income cap. So some CBOs have income caps, some don't. But that is something I'm seeing creep more and more into the literature. It's kind of one of the ways schools are fighting back and saying, we're not only just a bastion for the privileged class. Look, we work with these CBOs over here. But I've never seen any widespread, broad-based financial ramifications just because you're from any CBO. And I would really question that because from my experience, just putting the tag CBO behind your name is not going to cut it for a school. They're going to want to know a little more about your philosophy, your approach, your kids that you send. So I think it's more of a data collection thing, but it's terribly worded because anybody's going to read that and think like I'm at a disadvantage financially if I can't check the CBO box. So those are my thoughts. Anything you want to add to that, Lisa?
Yeah, in my work with Scholar Match, I don't think our kids got any preferential treatment from financial aid from being part of a CBO, and they did indicate that on their applications. I'm not sure of all the different relationships that Scholar Match has or doesn't have, but they weren't getting special deals in any way from the schools that they were admitted to.
So I'm actually really glad you mentioned that because what I shared with Duke and Penn is a complete outlier. Like how many times does somebody give your school $5 million for kids from a CBO? And that's what the Karsh family did. So that's a very unique thing. So you heard me mention we have over 90 partnerships at other schools, and we've had them at Franklin and Marshall and Davidson and Georgetown. I mean, we've had these for years. Those don't come with any different financial. Washington University in St. Louis, they don't come with any special perk. No, sometimes they have other perks, Like WashU has a special fly-in program for 25 of our kids. Some programs have special, like Davidson for years has had they'll take kids across the whole country. You got to remember, KIPP has over 230 schools. So it's a lot of people. It's the nation's largest charter school network. They'll take like 4 of our kids and allow them to go to their 3-week summer program and cover the cost. And so there's sometimes little perks like that. But the overwhelming majority of the time, you don't get a financial benefit for being in a CBO. That is extremely rare. That's more when there was designated given explicitly for your kids. And even usually then, it's not really that different than what they do for other kids of similar economic backgrounds. Most of the time, schools are going to base the financial package on an assessment of your need, of your assets and your income, student and parent. And they want to be consistent. It's very rare that they're going to get into this CBO gets this and this one gets that. It does happen sometimes, but that's an exception because a lot of schools work with like literally dozens of CBOs. They have like their CBOs in almost every city. And so they might have, 30 CBOs that they work with. They might have like 3 or 4 they work closely with. And most schools are not getting into, okay, this one gets this special deal, this one gets that special deal. The times when I see that, generally speaking, are two times. One, in the case of what I mentioned with KIPP and the Karsh family, like literally giving millions of dollars explicitly for kids. And you got to remember, those donors that do that, they're also giving you, like, for example, Duke. They gave Duke a $50 million gift, the biggest gift they'd ever gotten for need-based financial aid from one person. And $5 million of it was for KIPP. So 90% of it was just for Duke. They want to keep Mr. Karsh very happy. Yeah, right. That's a big, that's a big fish who's helping your programs. So I see it then. And the other time I see it is when you are providing such incredible talent and in large numbers that certain special things are warranted. And the best example would be the QuestBridge program. I mean, QuestBridge is literally placing 2,500 kids when you take their match program, which is more of an early decision program, and their regular admission program. They're placing 2,500 kids in 45 of the most selective schools in the country. And as I interact with those schools, they absolutely rave about the caliber of the kids they're getting. And some of those schools are taking over 100 kids. Some schools literally are relying on QuestBridge as almost their main source of like top 1% gifted and talented under-resourced kids. And so anytime you're bringing a lot of a lot of value to somebody, you have enhanced value, right? So I'll give you an example. So KIPP, we have a partnership with the University of Richmond as well. And so I've been able to just pick 12 kids. I don't even need to send them transcripts. They trust me. I can just pick 12 kids and they'll fly them in. They'll fly all of us in. They pick us up with limousines. It's really nice, Lisa.
Wow.
They pick us up with limousines with the chauffeur. They take us, they show us around, they feed us several meals, they give us all kinds of swag, and then we come back the same day. It's not an overnight program. But that's only because that's been built up by sending them really, really quality kids. A while ago I was talking about how like I would, and parents can come as well, but parents have to pay for their own ticket. Students get covered for free. I don't know if you remember a while ago I was talking about I'd take a group of people on a tour at Emory, and I was getting on the parents for talking during the tour. And that's because, like, I'm trying to be on our absolute best behavior so that we can get some of these kinds of perks. But those kinds of things get built up. Like, I couldn't start out with that at Richmond. That's just because I've sent, like, over a dozen kids to them. And then they reached out and said, we're getting superstars from you. Like, how can we leverage this to the next level? And then I said, well, you know what? Why don't you do a fly-in program for us? And they said, sure, we'll cover all the expenses. You pick the kids. But those things, they get built up over time. Most of the time, you can't do that. And also, most of the time, that requires a school with deep pockets, right? Richmond's sitting on almost a $3 billion endowment. I couldn't reach out to, I'm not going to mention names, I couldn't reach out to some of our less funded partnerships. No matter, I could have been a part of like 50 kids going there. They don't have the money. They're not going to turn around and do that. The Dukes and the Penns and the Richmonds, these are in the 1% of the wealthy schools in the country. So they're able to do things like that. Even though they are rare, I have to give one more example of a special perk. For those of you who heard my interview with Kristen Mosley about winning outside scholarships about 6 weeks or so ago, she was shocked when she went to pay her balance at Spelman, and she was told, "You have no balance. You have a scholarship, not only for this year, but for all 4 years, covering the full cost of attendance." Now, I was absolutely elated for Kristen, but it was bugging me. I was perplexed that I didn't know where that money came from. Well, I was doing a little research, and that same Martha and Bruce Karsh, given so much money to so many schools, Duke included, gave Spelman $2 million for KIPP students in 2012. But in this summer, July of 2021, right around the time when Kristen was finding out about the largesse in her account, they upped the ante and gave Spelman $4 million for KIPP scholarships. And I'm absolutely convinced someone knew how awesome Kristen was, and they said, "This is a young lady that's so deserving. Let's use some of this $4 million to help her out." We got through 3 questions.
Wow, 3 questions, 24 minutes. I don't believe it.
So we can do it again. And it'll be less after I edit all of our missteps. 21 minutes.
I know. Very good, Mark. Very, very good.
Awesome.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, if you heard part 1 of my interview with Lisa Keegan, you know she's very passionate about students and parents and families emphasizing fit when they're building a college list. So in part 2, Lisa's once again very candid. She talks about the pressure that she and others as administrators feel from trustees about college rankings. And Lisa and I have a very candid conversation about college rankings and how they influence the college process. Then Lisa answers the question, how does a student know whether they will feel a sense of belonging on a campus? Lisa shares some great ideas of what to do on your college visit that go beyond the traditional information session and tour. And then I asked Lisa if fit can change from when you start the process to when you're finishing up. Listen and enjoy. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure you've heard this, I always want to give attribution, but I forgot who coined it, is that the college admission process is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. You know, because I think so many people do approach it like a prize to be won.
Right.
And I feel for kids because, you know, there's a certain aspect of what we're talking about that sort of goes against psychology, because all psychology indicates how influenced teens are by peers and parents. And so if those are some of the loud voices in their ear saying, you know, just look at rankings, just look at selectivity, then it's a lot to ask somebody to overcome that. You know, it really is.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know you've touched on this in the podcast in a couple of different areas, right? Just the beast of rankings.
Right.
You know, of course, working in higher ed and you know, administrators and trustees pay attention to that.
I know you feel that pressure.
Of course we do. You know, but you do always have to look at that and say, what is this really portraying about my campus? And what promise does rankings make to students about the experience that they're going to have? It has to be deeper than that. So I fully recognize that oftentimes the search might start with rankings, but my advice there is you've got to look beyond that. You definitely need to look beyond that and see what the campus environment is really all about.
I was listening to Ed Fisk, Ed Fisk, he goes by both, talking about rankings. And boy, he just had a real succinct way of putting it. He said the problem with rankings, three problems he said with rankings. First of all, they asked the wrong question. The question isn't how good is the college? The question is how good is the college for you, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing he said is they rely so much on input data and not output data because it's impossible for them to sort of measure things like how much did you grow as a person? How much real learning did occurred? You know, how pleased were you with your experience? So they rely on a lot of sort of statistical things that they can create metrics for. And then the third thing is they give a false illusion of precision. So they, you think, oh, number 17 has to be better than number 47.
Right.
When in reality, their schools could be really similar in so many different ways, even, and then also different when it comes to matching whether or not they're for you. And so it's just, anyone who does what I do, we're always going to push back on that as much as we can. Sometimes it does feel like we're swimming upstream. I know one of the hardest things for me is and I've had to talk to two people I worked with last year about this. The only schools they were excited about were ones they thought they couldn't get in. As soon as they thought they could get in, they lost excitement about them.
Yeah. There's such a competitive nature about this whole process. And, I think, again, if the student's making a college list and thinking about fit, about something about the campus experience that really excites them, it opens more possibilities, right? Something's going to pop up in their search, and it may be at a school that they've never heard of. But if they're willing to look, beyond that website and see what else is there, you really are going to find some gems. And, I think that the increased attention to rankings and the selectivity, it just compounds the pressure for students. And I think they're missing out on some great options that are out there.
Totally agree. So here's another question for you, Lisa. How does a student know if they will feel a sense of belonging on a campus?
Yeah, I wish there was a magic answer, right? If
you and me both.
You'll be happy for 4 years. But I think, that's where you start to kind of think a little bit differently. You start the process, you're making your list, you're thinking a little bit about location, does the school have athletics? Does it have my major? But then it's time, particularly at the acceptance phase, to go, okay, do I see myself here for the next 4 years? And that's where it's time to look under the hood, kick the tires, really get a sense of what that campus experience is about. And again, you can do this, we figured out you could do this now virtually, you can do it in person. But it is, I think, trying to get a sense of connection to at least a person or the place. And this often can happen through your admissions counselor. It can happen through a professor meeting that you've arranged. It can happen with a chance encounter of someone on campus when you're touring. But I was reflecting on this, and relating it a little bit to the interview process. You've got to get a, feeling, is this where I can see myself thriving? And, I don't want to be in a place where everybody's like me, but do I feel a sense of connection, at least to a handful of people and a sense of community? And I think, I would tell students when you go on a campus visit, don't rush through it. Don't just drive through, right? Try, in a post-pandemic world, sit in the coffee shop and talk to current students. It's also reaching out and thinking about leaders of areas that you're interested in. So if it's about religious and spiritual life, make sure you take time to understand what that means at that campus and see if you can talk to someone or a current student. I think that's where there's a lot of reassurance, right? Okay, everything that I've read seems to be true. Again, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be perfect for the next 4 years, but it is doing a little bit of that deeper dive. And the good thing about the pandemic is every college campus has figured out how to be more accessible to students through this, how to make more time for that one-on-one connection. Again, hopefully just really providing students that reassurance as they're moving towards making that big decision about where they're going for 4 years.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Okay, friends, the recommended resource for episode 192 is a link, which we will include in the show notes. It's on the website, studentaid.gov, and the link specifically shows you how to create your own FSA ID. Now, what is an FSA ID? It is the electronic signature that you will need in order to sign the FAFSA. And today is the 30th of September, and the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, it opens tomorrow on the 1st of October. And so both parents and students are going to need to get an FSA ID, and you would need this for filling out your FAFSA. You need it for signing your master promissory note, which is the agreement of all the terms if you do take out a loan. You'll need it for applying for repayment plans, for completing loan counseling, and if by some chance you end up looking into public service loan forgiveness, you would also use your FSA ID. Now, basically, you're going to need your social security number and a mobile phone number, but you need to go to the link, and you can do that now. And so we'll put the link, studentaid.gov/FSA-ID, create-account, into the show notes, and check it out, because you'll need the FAFSA if you want to get federal free grant money, such as Pell or FSCOG. If you want to get the best low interest loan out there on the federal side, federal direct student loan, work study program. And keep in mind, a lot of schools use the FAFSA for their own institutional based money, as well as state-based aid. So very important. You probably know Chris Gruber at Davidson.
Sure.
I'm going to be interviewing him later on the coming up pretty soon. And just
great.
talking with him, he's a big believer that people don't spend enough time on the campus on a visit. That, he'll hear people say, "Oh, I just got back from 12 schools in the last 3 days," and like the whirlwind, and come right in. And I know it's hard because resources are oftentimes involved, and it's difficult either for hotels and, getting off work and all of that. But just coming in and doing it sounds like you're an advocate of going beyond just information session tour and dart on to the next one. It sounds like that's what I'm hearing. Would you agree, or what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. If time allows, go eat in the dining hall, right? Get your tour guide or ambassador's email address and connect with them after. If you can sit in on a class, sit on a class and see who's going to be teaching you. It is an investment of time, but when you're down to making a decision between 2 or 3 schools, it's absolutely worth that investment. Yeah, I do agree with Chris. I always get wary when, and I get it. Time is precious. So you often hear about families doing, the spring break whirlwind. We're going to go to 10 campuses in 1 week.
Right.
And how do you come up for air? And how do you even remember where you were? But I get that. So I think that's okay at the beginning. If there is an opportunity, and again, all resources are limited, but if you can do that return visit as an admitted student, that is, I think, one of the best ways to say and affirm your decision. Yes, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Great. Let's talk about fit possibly changing. Do you see fit ever changing as somebody starts out in one place and finishes in a different place? Have you experienced that at all in your admission process? And what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the pieces of advice that I always give to prospective students when I'm chatting with them. Be open-minded and realize that your decision might change. What you thought about a campus to be true, you may get there on a campus visit and realize, oh, I'm not sure this is what I really wanted. And I think the students that probably, wrestle the most are the ones who aren't willing to change, the ones who aren't willing to say, wait, I thought I wanted X, but I think Y is a much better fit for me. Really being open-minded and allowing that to change. And I think that's actually really important advice for parents and family members supporting in this process as well. I think they can often get frustrated by a student changing their minds.
I know.
But let them, right? This is the first time they're really making a decision largely independently, right? And how do you support them and let them discover through the process, right? We want students to do that when they get on our college campus as well. We want them to try a lot of new things, clubs and organizations and majors and minors. And by junior and senior year, they figured it out because they've experienced it. Those are the students that I see are so passionate, right, about what they're going to do after college. They're passionate about what they're doing while they're in college. So yeah, just being open-minded, it can absolutely change. It should change as you're doing your research and refining. There is the occasional student who's, 14 or 15 and says, I'm going to X school and I'm majoring in this and I'm going to do that. That's great. That does work out. But I frankly think for the majority of students, they change their mind as they go and experience different campus communities.
Well, even something like a college major, like it's pretty overwhelming when you think what we're asking kids at 16, 17, and 18 to sort of know what they want to study when they don't even know what all their options are. I mean, that's hard for people in their 30s to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then that's where you want to say for a lot of students, it doesn't matter, right? It's about the 4 years and critical thinking skills. It does matter for some majors. Yeah, absolutely. I really try to be a voice of that in my own campus community. For many students, a particular academic discipline, being on the college campus is the first time they're exposed to that. Very few traditional high school curriculums touch on the level of subject matter that we offer on our college campus. So how do we bridge that for students? I think it's a really, really important question. And even schools that admit by the school or the college, I think it's great when they still have some flexibility to change the major within that college, because students, college is about self-discovery and being exposed to topics and material that you've never seen before. And that often will inform what you ultimately want to major in. So, I've worked with students in college that have changed their major 3 or 4 times, right? And
Yeah.
I love hearing their path. Okay, wait, you came in pre-med and you graduated art history. Tell me about that, right? But I love that student because they took one class, right? One elective class and had an aha moment that totally changed their life and their path. And they're so excited about that. To me, that's the beauty of college. That's what this should be all about.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, this has been fantastic. And fortunately, friends, Lisa's back next week to talk about Bucknell. So we'll
Thanks
see you
so
next week.
much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And now it's time for our college spotlight of the week.
All right. Well, Lisa and I are going to transition now. We're going to talk about Meredith College. Very excited because is this the first time we visited college together?
Well, we went to Duke.
Oh, we went to Duke.
But we didn't really visit it. We were mostly visiting the students.
Meeting students. Yeah, we visited Duke in April.
Official college tour together, but not the last.
Definitely not the last. You're a fun person to visit schools with.
Well, I love it. It's like my happy place visiting schools. So
I'm going to start by talking out the disaster. Don't do what we say, do what we say, not what we do, right? I always give people the advice, like, arrive 30 minutes early. There's always going to be an accident. You won't be able to find parking. And Lisa and I are meeting with another one, our listeners, who's also a college counselor in the area. Shout out to Kim. And we pushed it. We were right across the street. You'd think that would be good. Not for us. We followed the GPS, even it was like half a mile from where we had breakfast. And it took us to a place that was closed down for, I guess, security with COVID. And we were just spinning around in circles and calling them. And we had a 9:00 meeting set up with the admission officer. So do as we say, not as we do. We're working on it over here. That was our start. And I've been intrigued by Meredith for a long time because my mom's brother, Uncle Danny, his daughter went there. And so I used to talk to Sarah about Meredith over the years, and I would visit her. She would travel. She was part of their course. And I was blown away by the caliber of the singing in their course. They've got a really special joint program with NC State for course. And so I've always wanted to get there. And it was my first time. But before I just sort of jump in and do the traditional spotlight, I've asked Lisa to just share her impressions.
Sure. Well, Meredith College, it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. It has about 1,800 to 2,000 students. And in my opinion, this is an undiscovered gem. It is a women's college, but it's great for B plus students and the stronger students who want to be considered for their fellows programs or their honors college. Some of the things I really liked, it's a beautiful campus. It's contained. It's like you're walking in a botanic garden all the time. It was fantastic. Very traditional college style with quads and red brick buildings and walkways. I loved the size of Meredith because every student that we talked to spoke at length about the personalized attention they'd gotten from their professors and just how much that had impacted their lives. And I thought that was really impressive. Another thing that I really like about Meredith is they offer not only a lot of academic support, but they offer a lot of personal development support. They have a Strong Points program, which really helps women learn how to be assertive, to take care of themselves, and even like the nuts and bolts. So our tour guide was telling us how when she got to Meredith, she didn't know how to handle her money and she was having problems budgeting. They have a person there that specifically is trained to help students learn how to write a budget, manage their credit, manage their student loans, all those things. And I just thought that was really a level of attention to detail for students that could really make a huge difference. I know that everyone we talked to at Meredith said that Meredith needed to become more inclusive, but they also said that Meredith is working really hard to become more inclusive. And so I felt it was nice that people were honest about the problem, but also honest about that there were solutions and that they had hope that it was going to be better. And they have some great programs like social work, business, communications, pre-med. They also have some kind of majors like interior design and hospitality management, which are a little bit harder to find, that are really great programs. So those are my initial thoughts.
No, I just want to reaffirm everything Lisa said. I know Lisa enough to know that she was really impressed, but she really tipped her hat when she found out they had tennis. And she started talking to the admission officer about her daughter who's in 8th grade and Meredith. So that's when I knew she was like beyond impressed.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to tell you a little bit about what our visit and then what they do for every visitor. And that sort of speaks a little bit to them. So we were on the campus for 3 hours and 50 minutes. There were 3 phases to our visit. We met with 2 different admission officers for just the 2 of us for an hour and 15 minutes. Then we had a 45-minute tour, and then we spent 60 minutes just talking to about a dozen students. And so we really got a real good feel of it, both from the professional admissions perspective, from the student perspective assigned to us, and then just the random students that we talked to. And the one thing I want to say is that's not just because we're like college counselors, and they gave us, sort of the roll out the red carpet VIP treatment. So it's their standard protocol to have incoming students, when you visit, meet with 2 different individual admission officers, get an overview of Meredith, almost like one-on-one info session. And then they didn't do this with us, but typically what happens is a student meets one-on-one with a faculty member. And while the student's meeting with the faculty member, a parent meets with the current student. And then you unite and go on tour. And what they actually normally do is they have students have a classroom experience. So this is very, I like the word Lisa coined when we were there. You guys are high touch, she said. And I agree. That's the term. They're very high touch. And I agree 100%. Like, I'm already thinking of somebody in Florida that this to me would be the best, my top recommendation for her. And she'll be finding that out on Friday when I roll up the list.
Spoiler alert.
No, spoiler alert. She doesn't listen to the podcast. I can get away with that. Yeah. So I'm good. And Florida's a big state. But I want to talk a little bit more about something Lisa mentioned, which is Strong Point. Strong Point is at the heart of Meredith. So they have 4 years of Strong Points, and they have a whole Strong Point team of advisors. And they use the Clifton Strength Finder assessment, and all students and all faculty go through this assessment. And so in your freshman year, you work with your faculty advisor and you explore your academic interests. And you look at Meredith's general education and their academic programs. And then in the sophomore year, you work in collaboration with your faculty advisor. You select a major and you create a pathway to complete your studies, hopefully in a timely manner. And then in your 3rd year, your junior year, they monitor and they revise your academic progress. They look at your graduation plan. That's all in consultation with your advisor. And then in the senior year, with your faculty advisor, they review your academic plan to ensure completion of all graduation requirements. So they have an academic component to it where they're working on your academic plan, emphasizing your strengths. They have an experiential component to the program. And there they're looking at all the different out of classroom experiences that can be done to enhance your real world learning. And I'll talk a little bit more about all that they do when it comes to experiential learning in a second. And then they have a financial literacy program. So, we always say, why is school not teaching you how to manage your money? So they make sure nobody's graduating there without knowing how to manage your money. So they're doing over everything in there, like how credit scores work and building good credit and bad credit and good loans, bad loans, and all that stuff. And then how to negotiate your salary. I mean, they cover a lot in they have a whole financial literacy curriculum. And then they also cover career and how to make strong, stable decisions about career, how to create a career path. And they have a series, like I said, of Strong Point advisors. And this whole concept of stronger kind of just jumps off the page when you're at Meredith. Didn't you feel right from the start when we got there? At least some people were wearing shirts like, be stronger, stronger this, stronger that. I felt like, whoa, this is like pretty clear, the messaging here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was like really apparent. Any thoughts?
No, you definitely saw that interwoven just throughout people's attire, things that students would talk about. And I think that, strength and teaching people how to live life in a very practical and powerful way. I mean, that's just a transformative experience that I don't think a lot of other schools really offer in that comprehensive of a way.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to agree with Lisa. This is a very, very impressive school. This is a transformational institution. And it was bore out in our conversations with people. There was a lot of pride. The people spoke a lot about how they had changed for the better since coming to the school. And there's just a lot of pride that they have in their school. They're very good at building community there.
Yeah.
It really did feel like a family. It just felt so safe. Everything about it felt safe. And I have to say one thing. I've never been to a place that's so strict on mask wearing. Oh, my goodness. It started right away when we pulled up to the security guard. And don't they use some kind of app to track you or something?
Yeah,
Lisa?
if you're a student, then they track. I think it's like those healthy apps. You have to track like whether you have symptoms, and if you don't have a green light, you can't get on campus, I'm sure.
And they've closed down all their entrances, as we found out, except for one. Even when you see students walking around outside, and we were outside a lot. All of our talking with students, that was all outside. They have masks on, and I'm not talking about over their mouth, over their nose.
Yeah.
And then when we were meeting with those two admission officers for an hour and 15 minutes, it's just Lisa and I with, two admission officers. Nobody's taking their mask off. It's over your nose. And it was such a contrast because we'll talk about this more later, but Lisa and I, then we went to NC State for the afternoon, and then we went to Duke the next day, and people did not have masks on outside.
No, they didn't.
It was like total contrast. So I was talking to a student, and she said, and I asked, you guys are serious on this mask thing? And she said, you know what? We do not want to go to remote learning. It's worth it for us to be able to not have a single class have to go remote. And so far, we've been able to do that. We haven't had to have a single class go remote. But you just get the feeling of safety there. I do want to say something about the president, Jo Allen. She's actually a grad. She graduated in 1980. And so she's got deep roots. And people spoke very, very, very positively about her. Like she's initiated a school-wide assessment of where the school needs to improve. It's almost like they applied their strength finder to their entire school, Lisa, and took the temperature. And
right.
And it's true. Like Lisa and I could say, we spent an hour just roaming around, randomly talking to a bunch of students. And I'm going to be doing an overview on that on episode 195, like kind of how I do that. And Lisa can chime in. What are you thinking, Lisa, over there? What are you thinking?
Folks, Mark is a master at chasing down students and asking them questions without looking like a stalker. So he has got it
I'm glad
mastered.
you threw the last part in. I'm glad you threw well, I'll tell you what. It helped having you beside me on a women's college.
True.
Especially one where they won't even take the mask off over their nose. I was a little worried about it at first. I was like, how am I going to? Well, I like to not leave a school without talking to 20. 10 is my absolute bare minimum. And so we'll talk more about that later. But we got a chance to interact. And a lot of people spoke about the president and just how she is listening to that feedback that came in from the survey. And almost everybody said what Lisa said. People said that the school needed to diversify and be more sensitive to people that are not like wealthy Caucasians from Raleigh, basically. And it needed to become more sensitive to that. And the good news is everybody feels like they can see changes that are being made. And I was not concerned about that. I was impressed with that. It's like if I go to a school and I hear a lot of people say that mental health is a problem on our campus, well, it's a problem on every campus. But if I hear people say, wow, we're really taking a lot of great steps to address it, I'm impressed with that. And so to me, they were taking the problem on and they were addressing it. I was impressed. So some more things about Meredith that I want to point out. I always like to start out with the school and give you a little bit about the history. I think that can be helpful. So it was chartered by the First Baptist Church. The Baptist Female University was its name when it was opened in 1891 in downtown Raleigh. In 1904, the name was changed to the Baptist University for Women. And then the name Meredith College was chosen in 1909 to honor Thomas Meredith, who was the founder of the Baptist newspaper, The Biblical Record. So it's kind of rooted in the Baptist tradition, which is very common. Baptists are very popular in North Carolina. In 1997, the college did move away from a direct connection with the Baptist State Convention. So they broke away from the Baptist Convention about 25 years ago. And then they began construction at their current location on Hillsborough Street, which is really the main street in Raleigh. That's the most famous street in Raleigh, Hillsborough. And so that's where they are, and right by North Carolina State. They're like 1.1 miles from North Carolina State. And in 1924, students began attending classes on this location. So they're coming up for like 100 years of this location being open. It's a 225-acre campus, and it's located really close to Raleigh-Durham International Airport and Research Triangle Park, which if you're North Carolina, they just call it like the Triangle. And so you're 10 minutes from downtown as well. But you would never know it. Like when you're on campus,
So
you're completely
peaceful.
yeah. Oh my goodness. It felt like I've never been to a monastery, but that's what it felt like. It would be it was like you would never ever know you were in a city, would you, Lisa?
No, it was serene. Yeah, that's the word I would use to
Yes.
describe it.
Yes. You hear the birds chirping. It's like greenery everywhere. It's truly a gorgeous campus. And I think the power of the nature kind of just sort of does something for your mind. I would say that. Some more things I want to point out that I haven't emphasized yet. Big experiential education school, right? They're really big on it. A lot like Elon, where your oldest daughter's at, Lisa. And I'm talking things like mentoring, internships, study abroad, research, teaching opportunities. They also really involve their upperclassmen a lot in different roles. They have over 600 leadership positions in the school. I've already mentioned the personal sense of community. Lisa talked about the personalized experience that you get. Some of their top programs are going to be music, social work, and education, interior design. They've got psychology, education. They've been known for years at producing educators for North Carolina. Social work, I mentioned social work, a really strong program. And then you want to talk a little bit about what they're doing with autism. Do you remember that? The autism clinic, Lisa?
Right.
Because I remember you right away, you're like, oh, that's going to get people jobs.
Well, they have an in-house autism clinic that is the social work students and the psychology students can get training working with kids with autism. And I remarked on that because that is a very important field, but also it's very specialized. And if you get certain licensure, you can make a very good living being a behavioral consultant working with autistic kids, as well as making a huge improvement and difference in the world. So I thought it was great that they had that right on campus. Their students could do it. It wasn't like a super competitive experience to get into. And it would really give them a lot of real world experience that could pay off in the long term.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Meredith is it is a liberal arts and sciences school, but it has really strong business. Really strong business. So let me just share a few things. They are one of 2 schools, women's colleges in the world that have the AACSB international accreditation for their business program. 2 in the world. So a lot of times at liberal arts and science colleges, you can't get business degrees. But you can get an accounting degree there. You can get a business administration and management degree there. I think it's their largest major, actually. You can get fashion merchandising. You can get human resource management degree. You can get marketing management. You can even get a degree in meeting and event planning. And they have an MBA program as well. They have a 4+1 MBA program. And while it is a women's college for undergraduate, the MBA program is co-ed. So it's it's 300 people in their MBA, in their master's program, not necessarily in the MBA program. 300 people in their master's program. So it's not a small little program, like 12 people or something. So those are some of the programs. And, normally I kind of do my own little background research when I ask what the strongest majors are. And I did do some of that, but those are questions that we also addressed to Brittany McCrae, who was the senior level admissions person that Lisa and I spent most of our time with, was with Brittany, of the two admissions officers that we met with. And so I asked her these questions. I asked her a number of questions. I said, what are your strongest programs? She's the one who said all of these programs. There's another really strong program that's starting to develop for them is digital communications. So they're like producing podcasters and YouTubers and training people how to do all that. She said the social work program is very activist oriented, so be aware of that. Like they're fighting at the grassroots level for a lot of public policy changes in North Carolina. That's kind of the culture of the program there. And another new program that they have under the School of Business they're really excited about is their tourism and hospitality program. That's the newest one. And then it is important to know a little bit more about their partnership with NC State. So NC State, obviously, really large, highly respected school. Lisa and I'll be doing a flagship of that in the next month, so we can do it while it's still fresh in our mind. They have a very kind of unique partnership with NC State. So they have a dual degree engineering program that you go to Meredith, and your first 3 years, you actually get a bachelor's there, and it's a 5-year program. And then you spend the last 2 years at the NC State campus. Now, you need to get into NC State. It's not automatic. They have around 8 to 9 students a year that do this program, and you can get your bachelor's at Meredith in one of 3 areas. You do have to get into one of these 3 areas, though. You have to get your degree in either chemistry, math, or computer science. And so if you get your degree in chemistry at Meredith, then you can go on and get a Bachelor of Science at NC State in biological engineering, biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, environmental engineering, or textile engineering. And we'll be talking more about that textile engineering when we do NC State, when we do that spotlight, but I won't steal the thunder. The second option is if you get your degree in math at Meredith, then you can go on to NC State and get your second degree in biological engineering, biomedical, civil, computer engineering, electrical, industrial, or mechanical. And then if you get your degree in computer science and engineering, then you usually are going into computer engineering. And one thing that really impressed both of us, so the person that's over this program on the counseling side, Dr. Sasha Orman, she continues to advise students even in the last 2 years when they're done at Meredith. And they're at NC State. She stays their advisor all the way through, and people really raved about her. They also have an articulation agreement. They're part of about 6 schools that have an articulation agreement with NC State. And those other schools are William and Peace, St. Augustine, Wake Tech, which is a community college, and Shaw. And the way it's set up is that if students can't take a course at their home college, then like the example that Brittany used was like genetics, for example, that you can take that course at NC State. You don't have to pay NC State any additional fees. And likewise, an NC State student can come to Meredith if something's not offered. And so I asked Brittany, I said, well, what makes an NC State student come to Meredith? What are you offering that's not offered on that huge campus? And she said, our interior design program, and our autism certification program, and in some cases, their music program. And so those, you can tell, are really highlight programs. They also have another program. It's a degree in administration in the arts. And this prepares you to be a fundraiser for like a gallery, a conservatory, a theater company. So that's kind of a unique program that they have. I'm going to take a breather for a second. Anything you want to comment on so far that I've said?
No, I thought that they had a pretty impressive array of majors and programs for such a small school. And to have those kind of relationships with such a large school right next door. So you can pretty much, if there's a hole to be filled, you can certainly find it at NC State. I think that's a real advantage that Meredith has.
Yeah, they do require all students to live on campus for the first 2 years, unless you live within commuting distance, which they define as 30 miles. Every student gets an academic advisor as well as an upper class student in your major. And you also get a big sis, little sis. So they create this whole First Friends community, combining it with upper class students and with faculty to create an incredible support system. They also have some really unique study abroads They have Meredith in Tuscany, Italy.
Mm.
This is a 30-year partnership that they've had. I said it wrong, didn't I?
No, Tuscany is right. You're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay. I've never been
I
there.
just want to go to Tuscany. So, I was just having a little mental vacation.
You
right
need
now.
to be you can say, like, I'll be like the volunteer college counselor
I
psychologist.
will. That goes to Tuscany.
Take me on the trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you get to take classes over there. And they also have another newer partnership. It's with Costa Rica. It's like a biodiversity trip. But they have a whole Office of International Programming. I was impressed with what I've learned both on the tour and some research afterward on their career center. And the students spoke very, very highly. In fact, our tour guide is a really interesting story. Like, she's Mexican-American, doesn't live that far from there. But she raved about the school, how supportive it's been, how transformational it is, and how they got her an incredible internship between her junior and senior year, all part through the Career Center. And she found out she absolutely loves doing social media. And she has a job offer already doing social media. All that came through their Career Center. So she was just talking about how transformational it was.
Yeah.
They're really, go ahead. You were going to say something, Lisa?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just saying about that student, she really recognized that she didn't get that great of a high school education, and she knew she was going to have difficulty writing in English because Spanish was her first language. And she just raved about her English professor, who really just helped her, gave her a tremendous amount of support, gave her a lot of individual tutoring. And now, she's a communications major. So that's an amazing accomplishment, I think.
No, I'm really glad you shared that. Another thing is they're really big on research. They research. I'll share some stats in our stats section on research, but they emphasize research a lot. You start doing research there in your freshman year. Every spring, they have this thing where they cancel classes for a day, and they come together and everybody shares their research that they've done with the rest of the student body, which is kind of exciting. And keep in mind, Raleigh it's been named over and over as one of the top cities for young professionals. There are over 115,000 students in the Greater Triangle area. And if you like restaurants and all that, they're all over the place. Right now, my daughter's just totally living her best life. As you guys know, regular listeners, Joy's been in Raleigh now for 2 months, attending NC State in grad school, clinical mental health counseling. And she's just loving, she's like, Dad, sorry to tell you this, but I might not be coming back to Atlanta. But this is a nice place, And I know Lisa's only, how far would you be from Meredith? 30 minutes maybe?
Yeah, it's about 30-minute drive from my house.
Yeah, and Lisa's loving her best life over in that area.
I
too. It's
am
just a really
living
good
my
place.
best life.
Yeah, it's a really good place. In fact, you guys don't know this, but now some of Lisa's relatives from the Midwest are visiting. Like, I'm liking this place.
Yeah.
They're working on the family members. They're looking at making the move now.
That's right. It's going to be a migration of family members here, I think, over the next couple of years. But, though, I think that, I come from Illinois, and Illinois was a state that's losing population, had some significant problems as well as many strengths. But the economy was not growing the way I see it as here. Every day we read about a new company that's headquartering in Raleigh or Durham, and just how many new jobs are going to be created. It's just a growing, vibrant place. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for young people in this area.
Yeah, so that's important. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that leads to jobs.
Yeah.
That leads to, when you graduate, there are jobs, because there are employers that need spots to fill. And it's very important that I think people take that into consideration when they're thinking about where they want to go. So another thing, Meredith's on the Common App, but they also give the option of doing their own app. They make a teacher rec optional. It's not a requirement. They do have some essay writing that's pretty important to them. You have to talk about, give you an opportunity to talk about goals, achievements, obstacles that you have encountered. It's a 250-word supplement that you need to do. They do have both ED, EA, and regular admission, which is really more rolling. And so decisions come out between December 2nd and February 15th. They don't require an interview, but they do for homeschool students. They make it mandatory. And they have an honors program as well. There's a special application for that. It comes with a little bit additional funding. And the academic profile is a little different for that student. They're looking for a real high GPA and, test scores that are higher than their averages. And then if you're in their honors program, you take 25 to 28 hours of honors courses, which is about a quarter of your total. You do need to maintain a 3.25 to stay in good standing. And you do complete an honors thesis as well. which is always good to sort of go deep on a topic and get that reading research experience with your culminating project if you decide to go there. They also have something called colloquia, which they take at least 3 colloquia that are offered for honor students, each year. And these are often team-taught, interdisciplinary, and it's just an excellent opportunity for students to broaden their interests. So some of the recent ones they've had have been Holocaust experiences, U.S. food culture, Introduction to Astronomy, Contemporary Issues in Religion and Science, The Making of a Genius, a look at Mozart's life, CSI, the science behind CSI, Don Juan. What would Don Juan be? I don't know. I don't have a clue. Don Juanologues, it says. Don Juanologues.
I want to go take
is.
that class.
What is it?
Wasn't Don Juan like a very romantic figure? But maybe there's sort of a study of that archetype or something like that. I don't know. As it relates to modern society and women's rights. I'm just making that up, but that's what I would think.
I see your intellectual curiosity. You want to go to Tuscany and you want to take the Don Juan class.
I want to take the Don Juan class in Tuscany, actually.
There you go, both. All right, let's dive into the stats. So they've started small, around 200. Now they're 1,800. They're 100 years young, 130 years young, as they like to say. They do have 90 majors, minors, and concentrations, over 100 clubs. Average GPA 3.45. Middle 50% on the ACTs and 19 to 25. And the SAT midpoint scores are around 1,100. They have gone test optional, though. And so they both for 2021 and 2022. I mentioned earlier, everybody automatically gets between $17,000 to $24,000 in merit money, with the larger numbers going to people that are higher test takers. One thing I do like is they are on the list of very DACA-friendly schools. And so they are using their own institutional money, and as well as a big grant that they get to reach out to DACA students. And we met quite a few DACA students, it seems like, Lisa, when we were talking to students randomly.
Yeah.
And I felt like they were really adding a nice diversity dimension to the campus.
Absolutely. It's a different experience. And I think that they felt really welcomed by Meredith. And again, Meredith was providing them with a transformational experience. The student that I recall talking to is pre-med, so she's gone from being undocumented. She's, going to be pre-med. They're going to help her get into medical school. I mean, that's just a life-changing kind of path for someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So they also have, a few high-end scholarships that they give 2 or 3 a year that are like full cost of attendance, President of Legacy scholarships, and they have special talent scholarships as well. This is in addition to the 17 to 24 that you're going to get right off the top. They have special scholarships in art, theater, interior design has its own scholarship, and music. This is an example of a school of how you can't look at sticker price and get sticker price intimidation. It was very clear our tour guide did not come from a lot of means. And Meredith's able to, she was able to make Meredith work, with her resources. And she indicated that, first she had sticker shock and how could I ever afford this? And they really worked with her. As far as the learning environment, this is going to be an admin environment. So the average class size goes back and forth every year between 15 and 16. So that's small. That's small in high school, let alone college. Student faculty ratio 11 to 1. They have students from 32 states, 31 countries. 72% acceptance rate, 32% yield, and racial diversity, 65% white, 11% Hispanic Latino, 9% Black, 5% biracial, 4% Asian, 31% Pell. So they've also got a nice amount of socioeconomic diversity there as well. They have over 100 clubs and organizations. They play Division III sports. They have 10 different sports for Division III. And those 10 sports are basketball, cross country, field hockey, golf, lacrosse, soccer, softball, tennis, and track and field and volleyball. They're very happy that they just added golf and field hockey. And field hockey is so popular in the Northeast that it's really leading to a lot more, students coming from the Northeast because of field hockey. They're a member of the USA South Atlantic Conference. They've been a member since 2007, and they've had their most success athletically in lacrosse, soccer, and tennis, Lisa. Tennis.
She'll probably be done with tennis.
You guys don't know this, but you've heard the term soccer mom? Well, there's a new term on the block. It's called tennis mom.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to Lisa, and she's hanging out at the courts for hours. And then there's doubles. And she's like, she thought she was getting out of there at 6 and she's still there at 8.
Well, I'm a new tennis mom, but it's quite an education to watch tennis. I knew nothing about it before my daughter started playing it, but I'm starting to realize how it's scored, which is important because we discovered on Monday that some of the girls actually cheat, not my daughter. So
Good stuff. Tennis mom, soccer mom.
that's right.
So the last thing I'll share is their mission statement. I really do feel that they, from what we observe, they live it out. Meredith College, grounded in the liberal arts and committed to professional preparation, because they're the liberal arts, but then they're really big on this, business and some of these other engineering, like they can give you business and engineering and real strong career placements. So Meredith College, grounded in the liberal arts, committed to professional preparation, educates and inspires students to live with integrity and provide leadership for the needs, opportunities, and challenges of society. So I thought from what we observed, I think that they do a pretty good job of living that out, or, obviously no place is perfect.
Of course.
Anything else you picked up, Lisa, from the students that we talked to that we didn't comment on?
They seemed happy. They seemed happy. They seemed well cared for. They were studious, but they weren't stressed. They seemed happy. And I would just like to add, I thought a lot about this after our time at Meredith, but I really think that women should consider going to a women's college. I know that it's not popular among a lot of women, but I started thinking about my own college and graduate school experience. And I spent a lot of time in classes getting interrupted by men. I spent a lot of time in classes never being able to get a word in edgewise because I wasn't aggressive about putting my voice in the conversation. And I think I spent a lot of my classes being annoyed, irritated. And I started thinking, what would my life have been like if I was just thinking about what they were teaching and I wasn't managing all my feelings about that or trying to figure out how I could get into the conversation. And I think that being in a women's college might just really help women to just focus on their learning and not get mansplained, not get interrupted, and just to be able to fully complete their thoughts, to express themselves. And I think that might have led to more creativity for me, but certainly would have been a more pleasant experience. So I really think that it's a great experience. It's not something you're going to get for the rest of your life, but certainly in that formative time of your life when you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want, what you'd like to study, consider a women's college. I mean, people meet people online anyway, so you don't need the boys to be at the school.
I'm really glad you said that because I try as hard as I can to get every young woman I work with to put one on their list. And I at least say, I'd like you to at least visit one. Now, there's some that they would show me the door so fast if I even went there because in my questionnaire, there's some that make it so crystal clear that that is not something they are even ever remotely going to do. And so I don't go there. But most of the time I do try to do that because, I mean, I have students right now at so many different women's colleges that never would have thought about it at first. And this is a school, like I say about Meredith, you have to visit this school to understand.
Right.
That's what I used to say when we did boarding school admissions. The challenging of boarding school admissions is it has to be experienced to be understood. How do you communicate something that has to be experienced to be understood? That's how Meredith is. And they did say something really interesting. They said the overwhelming number of their students do not pick them because they're a women's college. They picked them for other reasons, or they weren't even thinking about a women's college originally. And then they set foot on that campus. And one thing I would strongly encourage our listeners to do, if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to my interview with Deb Shaver. You can just go to yourcollegemindkid.com and you don't even have to go to the interviews tab. Just put in the word Deb in the search bar. Of course, she's been in admissions for 42 years and been at 5 schools. And her last stint was 24 years at the Dean of Smith. And I did an interview with her on the case for women's colleges, and it was very, very, very powerful.
It was.
And I strongly encourage you to listen to that. And in addition to checking out the interview with Deb Shaver, I want to strongly encourage you to check out a resource that Deb shared in that interview, which is just womenscolleges.org. It talks about the Women's College Coalition, and what it does is it talks about the research behind going to a women's college. It's very impressive. A lot of stuff is similar for HBCUs. What I'm with Black families, I say, look at an HBCU. Like, there's a lot of very, very compelling research. It wasn't where I ended up or neither one of my kids, but I at least like people to explore it. And we're not saying everybody needs to go there, but like I say to everybody, I encourage you to at least visit one. with an open mind. And we'll leave it at that.
All right, great.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
I like tag teaming with you.
All right, it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun on the visit. It was fun doing it together on this episode. And so next week, you won't hear from us for a college spotlight because Lisa Keegan will be talking about Bucknell. And then the week after that, we will be blessed to get the spotlight on UCSD. All of us will be on the call on that one. Sylvia Borgo will do the one on UCSD. And then the week after that, Lisa and I will be back to talk about NC State, which was where we were the afternoon, which was totally a contrast, wasn't it? Talk about two different schools.
Yeah. Another great place, but very different.
Correct. Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Thank you.
Next week, in the news, college rankings have fueled an arms race that has pushed higher education astray. A great article by Susan Paterno of the Washington Post. Our questions from a listener is, my son is bright but has ADD and is an underachiever with a B average. Where do kids like him end up? Our interview is with Lisa Keegan, the Vice President of Enrollment of Bucknell on Understanding Bucknell. And our college spotlight will be on Understanding Bucknell.
And friends, you're going to want to hear that segment with an ADD, ADHD. We can throw that in as well. Lisa's going to take the lead on that. She's very humble, but she's got a lot of experience. And so I'm interested in learning from her, and I hope you are as well, on how students with ADD and ADHD can function and excel in school. So see you next week, my friend. This is my first time trying my semi new sound booth. It's like 75% constructed, so I can't wait to go back and see if I like my sound quality.
Well, it's nice seeing you when you're not underneath a pillow.
Anything is an improvement to that.
I said, I didn't know that you've been listening to the commercials for My Pillow guy. Did he send you a package deal?
Stop it. Stop it.
Have you been hanging out with Mike Lindell?
You do that one time, and then it's like you appreciate your freedom again. Freedom, fresh air. All right, my friend. I know you got to work tonight, pulling all-nighter, so take care. I'll let you get some rest.
Awesome. See you next week, my friend.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please subscribe so you get every episode as soon as it is released. If you are interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. And you can write a review for us on your favorite podcast listening app. I am the producer of the Your College Bound Kid podcast. We have a fantastic team of 9 people. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. David Williams and Dr. Lisa Ruff. Our sound engineer who fixes all of our many errors is Nemanja Modfitch. The amazing music you hear is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Dalianas Dimitri. If you want to have a college coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want to ask, or a college you want Lisa or me to do a spotlight on, or if you have a recommended resource or an article you think we should share, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you, our family, next week.